Welcome to Women Atheists Unload here on Skeptic Haven, a show made by women for women. Today's topic is trans women and sports.
I know you told your friend you're not okay, and tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way. And guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray.
Hey everybody, today's panel is pretty star-studded.
Hang on a second. Look below you. Oh, look, there she comes.
She had to do a comical.
Well, now it's even more star-studded. We have to my over there.
We can't hear you.
Bumble Bre, the lovely Bre of Hiveside. We have Cindy Plaza. We have the lovely and talented Amy Newman with a very sporty hat, and the superior star of the show is Phoebe Rose, who's almost as egotistical as I am, but not quite.
Just think you're more egotistical than me. You just
Well, anyway.
Egos will clash tonight.
Shall we just do some introductions? Bre, why don't you tell us who you are, where you are, what you do, and all that stuff?
I'm Bre from Hiveside, like you see down there, and I have a channel where I talk mostly about science and debunking bad science and having some laughs along the way. I do some trans activism and LGBTQ activism as part of my brand as well. So that's what brings me here tonight, because although I am far from an athlete, I do support everybody's rights to participate in athletics. So I'm hoping to learn some stuff here tonight as well.
And Cindy.
Hey, so I'm Cindy Plaza. Probably everyone here knows me already. So I play soccer at an amateur level. And since I'm 44 years old, I'm not, not playing big competition anyway. So I have a channel, but it's sleeping at the moment. So that's it to me.
And Amy Newman, who are you? Where are you? Why are you? What are you? What's going on?
Hello, everyone. I am proud to be a wonderful trans woman who has. I've heard sports before. I hear people have played the foosball and Go Local Team, and me and my co-host James W. We do content at my channel at Amy Newman. And we do skeptic content, mostly go after the religious people who target us. And I am mostly here to just remind everyone in a very loving, very not, passive, very openly, that just trans people will always exist. And I'm sending you love, and I'm excited to be here.
Great. Great to have you. And Phoebe Rose, what are you? Who are you? Where are you? What's going on? What's your channel? What's your sign?
I'm shocked. There are trans people here? What?
Yeah, I know.
Amy, what are these trans people you're talking of? I mean, goodness sakes.
She says they exist, but I've never seen one, right?
See, we're all virtually here. We're all virtual. But anyway, I am Phoebe Rose, and I am an internet activist in the world of Australian politics, sports politics, skepticism, and I'm the host of Transition Stories. I'm a co-host of the Transatlantic Sports Show, and I am also a co-panelist, not the host because that's Damien, of Let's Save the Governor General, where we talk about everything Australian up the wazoo. And we do specials and things, and we talk about nonsense, and I get on my soapbox about how bad Australia is, about trans people, and I have interviewed 3/4 of the other people on this panel on my show. So you should go check out my channel and check out those interviews, because I have to have someone to look good against.
And so with that, I'll introduce myself. I'm Stephanie Helms. I am a professional sailor, have been for quite some time, including the 25 years since I transitioned back in the Stone Age. And so today we're here. My channel. I do have a channel. I only need 4 more people to subscribe to my channel to get to 200 subscribers. Think about it. Just think about it. Anyway, enough about me. But we're here today to talk about trans women in sport, trans women and sport. And so my first question to all you all, just to throw it out there to get us going, is what is it about sport that captivates people's interest? Why this focus? Why is it? I so often hear people say, well, I don't really care about sports, but when it comes to trans women in sport, I just don't think that's right, because trans women in sport have an unfair advantage and all of this sort of thing. So we'll get to all those topics, but what is it about sport that focuses people's minds so keenly, particularly when it comes to the issue of trans women?
Because it's simple, and because there is a very deeply rooted vision that women's sports is inferior to men's sports. That's, in my opinion, that's the main reasons.
Well, I could give you I'll give you the abridged reason as to why I think this is such a topic. It's because, well, sport is fantastic. It is a community event. It is a way that you can see other people who are like you do things extraordinary. And you too can do things extraordinary. I mean, I'm not the biggest American football fan, but I understand American football. I understand why people love it. I am an enormous association football fan, and I understand every minute of it. And I understand why people get behind it. And if you don't get behind that community and that belonging, then there's something wrong with you, in my opinion. If you don't want to cheer on those 11 people that you're never going to see in real life, then there's something wrong with you. If you don't believe that your hometown team should be better, then why are you living there? I just don't get it otherwise. Sport is one of these things where you can go there, you can scream like a lunatic, you can let off the energy, you can feel good, you can win and you can lose together, you can win and you can lose on your own. And you can walk out and it doesn't mean anything. Well, it shouldn't mean anything. And plus, I get to watch tight-fitting fire suits on very athletic men drive round in fast cars. It's just fantastic. Who doesn't like 20 or 22 men and the occasional woman in a tight-fitting fire suit driving at 330 kilometers an hour in Singapore at night? Who doesn't like that?
I don't know. Sam Police. Amy, got any thoughts on this? What do you think?
I do.
I got a hat.
I do.
Amy has thoughts.
And as someone who I will watch foosballs or any sporting event in real life as long as there is some sort of alcohol involved and there's some sort of food involved. And so if you have a carb or a meat, if you're a vegetarian, I will watch that sport. But I'll tell you the real reason why I think we're even talking about this is because this is one of the issues of maybe 3 that they have chosen to make political because they think that they can.
Who are they?
Ground. Oh, I'll say they. The right-wing religious fundamentalists. I probably should have put. That's kind of. It always goes back to them. It kind of is like a Voldemort situation.
I'm going to push back a little bit. I'm going to push back a little bit on this, Amy, because it might be, you might say it's the right-wing religious fundamentalists who have brought the issue to the fore.
Sure,
but There are some very prominent people within the atheist community, within the skeptical community, within the community of people that legitimately consider themselves to be allies, trans allies.
I'm going to say something controversial here. Hang on. I'm going to say something controversial here.
No.
Stephanie, are these people boomers? Are these people boomers?
I don't know. Is Stephen Woodford? Wait a fucking minute here. Is Stephen Woodford a boomer?
I don't know who Stephen Woodford is.
Rationality
rules. Is he a boomer?
I don't know who that is.
Okay. No, he's like
Professor
Dave.
Professor
on
Dave.
the other hand, he's a fucking boomer.
Professor Dave, is he a boomer?
I don't know who that is.
Okay. Well, other people do. And those are people who will consider trans women to be women until it comes to sport. And that's a problem.
So why this issue? It's because very specifically they can use this as a barometer for fairness. So they use this with the locker room and the bathroom and sports. I would say these are the three major issues. And so when it comes to the sports issue, we're talking about the metric of fairness. You have people who are saying, look, we're just trying to understand what's being fair. But that's what the trans women and trans men are also trying to say, is we want things to be fair. And so I think that is where this discussion is.
You know, they got it wrong, really. The trans agenda is not to invade women's spaces, to invade sports and things like that. It's my trans agenda is for future generations of kids who are trans, like I was when I was a kid, who are stuck in the closet because the society doesn't accept them and they wouldn't be able to participate with their peers if they came out. That's my trans agenda. When my trans sports agenda is and people always want to bring it to elite athletes. You know, when it comes to the bottom line, I care about the youth being able to participate, because sports are for the youth, right? They're games for us to engage with our peers, and we need to have the opportunity to interact with what Stephanie calls our cohort. I'd say our peers, but whichever term you use, that's what my agenda is. I don't know.
I've got a question. I've got a basic fundamental question here. What is a sport?
It's a good question.
Is darts a sport? Is chess a sport?
Yeah, those are good questions right there.
Because I have examples from both of those where trans women have been banned because they claim to be sports. I would say neither of them are sports. Yet,
I would say darts is closer.
Darts,
darts is closer.
Yes,
because there is that, that the hand-eye coordination and stuff like that. It involves a certain amount of physical acuity that chess certainly doesn't.
Poker a sport?
I don't think poker is a sport. I think poker is
What about bowling?
What kind of bowling? Lawn bowling, 10-pin bowling, duck pin bowling? What kind of bowling?
10-pin bowling, I guess, is the one. Yeah.
Can bird watching be a sport?
I think bowling qualifies. I think the difference between a game and a sport is a certain element of physical acuity that's involved. That involves whether it's hand-eye. I would as well.
Bowling,
and that's why I'm saying
bowling, duck pin bowling, skittles, because you have to have a certain element of power behind you, and you have to have a certain element of control of the object with that power as well.
Mm-hmm. And it also, a sport is also a game. For example, sailing is an activity, but sailboat racing is a sport.
So to answer Skeptic Haven, no, you'd not your ball.
No, because like track and field is sports, and
badminton is a sport. And that's a shuttlecock.
You're just running for a lot of events. You just run, and that's a sport. So
javelin, discus, hammer, shot put. Okay, not shot put. That is a circular object which could be classed as a ball. But hammer, javelin, and discus, they're not balls, and those are definitely sports.
What about caber tossing?
Gymnastics, ice skating,
Only my
figure skating.
Transatlantic sports show host was here. She would eat you alive. Blair Hamilton would eat you alive for that comment.
What about the caber toss?
Yes, she's Scottish.
Yeah. What's the one where in Winter Olympics where they have the thing you slide and you got to try to get the close as you can?
Skeleton.
No.
Curling.
You're talking about
curling.
Skeleton
get
ball.
it in the house. No,
Skeleton
no,
ball,
no,
curling.
no.
luge,
No.
bobsleigh.
Curling. That's what I was thinking of.
Curling.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
So,
Pro wrestling is entertainment, not sports.
It's sports entertainment.
What? Are you telling me wrestling isn't real?
Depends on the kind of wrestling. UFC very much is, and now UFC and WWE are the same company.
But most of it is like saying that people up on the stage doing sword fighting for a Shakespeare play as a sport. Then
Anyway,
is it okay? So I don't know how relevant the discussion of what is a sport is to this, except insofar as the notion of excluding trans women from participation in any of these activities is really the thing that's on the table here. So, the fact that chess is excluding trans women from competing in a women's division that is there in order to encourage women to participate in the game of chess.
but on that point, the chess ban is even more ridiculous when you look at it from trans men, because trans men will have their records expunged and the competition they won eliminated from existence as if it never happened.
Correct.
That's absurd.
Yes, it is. That we're getting into the way sporting federations have gotten to them. We'll get there. We will get there. We'll get to the history, but I want to stick to the whole idea of, and Amy brought this up earlier. What is fairness in sport? Because I think that's how do you get to fair when it comes to competitive athletic sport that involves that kind of physical activity that we're talking about?
It's inherently unfair. From the very notion of that, it is inherently unfair.
And this is why I kind of support more of the abstract notion to kind of get rid of a lot of the gendered categories, and that it depends on the sport, but some of them, I like chess. I'm trying to understand, why there needs to be a men's or women's category, but I know it depends very much on the sport, because I know in some metrics you're going to be able to mitigate a lot of, if there is a gender dimorphic advantage or disadvantage in a sport, a lot of times when you've been on years of hormone therapy, if you've had surgery, if you've had numerous steps, you can actually make things about competitively back to these categories that they were talking to, the two boxes anyway. So both of those things.
And there's also something that bothers me, because when we have those discussions, people try to come to the argument that trans women have an unfair advantage because they went through puberty, and so they have more muscle mass and so on. And if you go to actual science says that women in general have less red blood cells than men. And so if you take this into account in all sports, like in soccer, the fields for women should be smaller if you really, really want it to be fair, because there's the height difference between men and women on average, and everything else. So if you really wanted to have a perfectly
Equity.
fair, if that's even possible,
But then but then with that, you then get into resources, and there's only so much resource that can go around. There was a notion in association football recently to have smaller goals for women's matches over men's matches. It was rejected because it would reduce the number of pitches and goals that were available to women, because they're using a different size, so therefore they couldn't use the generic goal that was available to men. So it would reduce participation in that way.
And can I just piggyback off that point? Is it unfair that a man who is born smaller will have a much harder time in basketball? That he could work as hard as he can, that he could do certain things that if people that have to pole vault, and that they have a shorter amount of body to go, is that an advantage? And sometimes, depending on the sport, it's going to depend on multiple different factors, many of which may not even have to do with sex, but actually just having to do with body type.
So I say something here on that point. I am a motorsports nut, absolute nut. Give me motorsports until the day I die. I cannot, under any circumstances, get into a single-seat racing car. I am too tall. I am far too tall for a single-seat racing car. Nothing to do with being trans. Nothing to do with the amount of work I put into it. I am physically too tall to sit in a single-seat racing car. And yes, it is unfair, but it's a reality, because I can't physically fit into the car to do the racing. At 6'4", 6'5", I'm too big. Lewis Hamilton is 5'7". Yuki Tsunoda is a little over 5'1". It's not unfair to have differences. Was it unfair that Usain Bolt won the 2012 Olympics because he was genetically better? Of course it was. Should he have been banned? Of course not. Did anyone care? No. Why? Because they don't care about those levels of unfairness and those types of unfairness. It's just this type of unfairness that they have honed in on, that they believe is an unfairness. But I don't think it's got anything to do with unfairness at all. It is infantilization of women and the fear amongst mainly cis men that cis men are that men, as they see us, trans women, are abandoning being men to be women, and that scares them.
Well, we seem to have touched on a number of things that I did want to get to. Are all sports the same? I think we're answering that question. No, I think a lot of questions, as like Phoebe just said. For example, in my sport is very sailboat racing is very equipment dependent, and some body types are just simply unsuited to the equipment that is being used in the Olympic Games. The women's single-handed dinghy is the laser radial. It's got a smaller sail plan, same boat, same hull, but a smaller sail plan. And if you weigh a heck of a lot more than 145 pounds, you can't be competitive sailing that boat. You can't. So I know I'm maybe 30 pounds off of that. I might be marginally competitive sailing a laser radial, but one of my very good friends is a cis woman who weighs 190. She can't sail. She's an excellent sailor. She can't sail the boat. I mean, she's automatically excluded, and it's unfair, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. So sailing's different. Auto racing is different. There are all sorts of different things, which is why or at least partially why, aside from the fact that the IOC was sick and tired of being in the game of deciding who's a woman and who isn't after almost 30 years of trying.
Gender tests not included.
Yeah, nude tests not included. Well, they were included at one point in time.
They were included along with chromosomal.
Yep.
But if you remember the British royal family,
hopefully
you were exempt. If you were Princess Anne, you were exempt.
Yeah, that's true. There's I think it was Maria Jose Martinez was a Spanish woman, was doing very, very well in track and field, forgot her certificate of femininity when she showed up at a regatta. And so they did a swab. This was back in 1987, I think, 86, 87, somewhere in there. So they took a swab and, oh my dear, you've got a Y chromosome. She was born a woman, raised a woman, is a woman, she's got complete androgen insensitivity syndrome. And she sued and she won, and they stopped doing karyotype testing for as a determining factor for participation in the Olympic Games. And they can't, and the IOC settled on testosterone levels as being a thing. They settled on that in 2004. In 2004, they said and this applied not just to trans women, applied to every woman if you wanted to compete in the women's, sport that had a women's division. If you wanted to compete in the women's division, no qualifications for the men's division whatsoever. If you wanted to compete in the women's division, you had to have for the IOC, your testosterone level had to be under 10 nanomoles per liter. If it was World Athletics, under 5 nanomoles per liter. So they settled on that. That lasted for a while. And then in 2018, when all this shit started to blow up because of the right-wing malarkey, by 2021, they said, we're out of the game. We don't want to go through this for another quadrennium. We're going to turn it over to all the international federations, the world federations in sport, and let them decide their own qualifications for competitions that involve a division of men and women for women's competition. So that's a little bit of the history at the elite levels of sports. That kind of trickles down into other levels of sport too. But I want people to understand that it's not like this is something that sporting federations or sporting governing bodies haven't been wrestling with for a very, very long time.
But this
is not new.
Just to bounce off, speaking of trickle down, and I want the political point, I'm not trying to, when I bring up they, and when I say a specific part of right-wing fundamentalists, I'm not trying to just take pot shots across an aisle. I think it could be lovely and not lovely on either side of
I think what you're getting at is you can be a right-wing lunatic or a left-wing lunatic, a centrist lunatic or a apolitical lunatic. Doesn't matter.
Yes. And so I just
you're still a lunatic.
Exactly. And so I just think that this is being used as a wedge issue because I could feel it politically. We've been pushing for our rights. We were trying to get gay marriage and we got gay marriage. We were trying to get trans people in the military and we got trans people in the military. And now we were trying to be like, hey, just let us live. Let's just let us live our lives and go do that. And now they're kind of realizing, there has to be either a pushback or they're going to be normalized. And now, so we've had this reaction with all these bills and all this hoo-ha and
Let's not pretend that that there isn't it isn't institutionalized to push back, because there's like the Heartland Institute they're a political think tank that's built into attacking or trying to attack LGBTQ from any angle that they can. It is systematic. They have bought politicians. They have billions of dollars to spend on trying to keep this wedge issue in the forefront of people's mind so that they can win elections off of this while having terrible like environmental policies and economic policies. They can have those terrible economic policies if they keep this issue in the forefront to say, hey, we got to keep these trans people away from your kids. You don't want to make you don't want your daughter to be in a race against
them. You sound like the government of the United Kingdom there. You know, failing economy, corruption up the wazoo, 4 prime ministers in 3 years. You know, you sound like the government of the United Kingdom here. And I'm going to say this, the government of the United Kingdom is racist, xenophobic, homophobic, transphobic, misogynistic, and it's all run by people who are white. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and the Home Secretary of the United Kingdom are the 2 most racist politicians you will ever encounter in your life. And they are non-white people. This is how ridiculous we have got in this world. When you have a Home Secretary of the United Kingdom who is only 4 generations removed from living in a colony of the United Kingdom, saying that she is dreaming of deporting people. This is the level of nonsense we've got in the world of politics. And they are trying to distract from all of these failings, all of this horrificness by attacking the 5 people on this panel and the thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of trans people who are just trying to get on with their life. Getting back to something Stephanie said, I want to blame East Germany.
Oh,
I knew it.
There's that thing. Well, we can talk about doping, and I think that this is an interesting thing. It's as if often when people start talking about the issue of trans women in sport, I also want to get back to why women's sport, why there should be categories.
But why does it exist in the first place? Why is it there in the first place?
Why is it there in the first place? There are a number of things, but I wanted to go off on the doping stuff. It seems like that it's really interesting that people who are opposed to trans women in women's sport seem to think that reducing testosterone does nothing. I mean that it has no physiological impact. It has no, dare I say it, biological impact on the way a person's body runs, on so many things. Cindy brought up well, she didn't say VO2 levels, but VO2 levels, the oxygen carrying capacity of one's bloodstream. It's measured by VO2 is measured by how much oxygen is actually in your blood. A very clear indicator of that is hematocrit levels. Hematocrit is basically the amount of hemoglobin that your red cells are carrying around. And one of the very earliest things that happens in medical transition for women assigned male at birth, when they start medical transition and start taking or start reducing the level of testosterone in their bloodstream, is within 6 months, hematocrit levels are within the typically female range. So if you are 6'5", with a great big heart and enormous lungs and all of this other stuff, you have to power that with less oxygen. Is that an advantage or a disadvantage? So this is the curious thing to me that at the same time people are saying, well, it's cheating when somebody is T-doping, right? The way things are happening. But yet, at the same time, there's no recognition that biological changes occur.
Where are we? Where are we with these records? Where are we with these records?
and the corresponding thing happens for trans men. You start testosterone, and your hematocrit levels are within the normal range, the typical male range of hematocrit within 6 months.
But that doesn't count, because to most people, sports is about muscles. I mean, manhood is about muscles, and everything about being a transgender is well, you went through male puberty, so you have more muscles, and so you have an unfair advantage.
You're describing something called the Dunning-Kruger effect here very, very well. You're explaining Dunning-Kruger very, very well.
A lot of these folks apparently the strongest muscle is in their brain, and they don't have enough neurons up there.
It's their jaw muscle, because they keep talking and don't know what the hell they're talking about.
But I mean, getting back to what Cindy was saying, sorry to cut in here, but Cindy is demonstrating the Dunning-Kruger effect, because there is 3 things that spring to mind immediately. The first thing is that people make assumptions. People believe that Stephanie is now a ghost. People also believe, number one, that you know the answer already. Oh, look, a cis man equals a trans woman. Oh, look, a cis woman equals a trans man. That's number 1 on the Dunning-Kruger nonsense. Number 2 is that there is a presumption of guilt amongst federations and a lot of other competitors that trans people, such as trans women, are going to have an advantage, and that trans men will be at some form of disadvantage. And the third thing is they are pronouncing a verdict before they have bothered to do the research. Hilton and Lundberg should be fired out of a cannon for the idiocy that they have put in the mouths of sporting federations. That is one of the greatest examples of scientific fraud since Mr. Andrew Wakefield said vaccines cause autism.
I have a shirt that says vaccines cause adults.
Also, Emma Hilton, Tommy Lundberg, sue me and I'll happily see you in court.
I'd like to come back to something Stephanie said earlier, because that's a point that I try to bring to the discussion, because it's never raised. It's the disadvantages we have by being trans in sports. Like, besides all the physiological aspects we talked about so far, there are a lot of psychological aspects, like what happened when you go through your transition and you lose your family and everything else. You lose your job, and so all this psychological aspect is never mentioned. And we know that psychology is very, very important in competition. Like all very top athletes, they all have mental coaches. We know how impactful it is, and that's just one aspect. I mean, I took 20 kilos when I started taking hormones, and I haven't managed to lose them since. So that impacts my ability to practice my sport. And even for those who manage to get rid of this, it's still one more hurdle that the other ones don't have to deal with. So yeah, I want us to speak more about these disadvantages.
Every time that I talk with someone about like a steroid type of issue, what normally starts is that they focus first on male to female, because for whatever reason that they put us in the shine, and we talk about trying to manage get rid of testosterone and talk about estrogen. But then when we also flip it and we talk about trans men, and I ask, well, where are they supposed to go? I often get, well, they're basically doping. And so by the time you are done speaking with them, what they are in essence saying is trans women, trans men, doesn't matter what kind of trans you are. If you're trans, you should not be in sports. And I think that there has to be some way, because the big point I get when I talk about, just do away with gender sports. You go, well, hey, there's women who get scholarships out there. Are you saying you don't want women to get scholarships? It's like, well, no, I want women to get scholarships. I'm not trying to take that away. I'm just trying to figure out solutions to a very complex, nuanced subject that I think we just have to wrestle out and sometimes deal with on a sport by sport issue basis.
It's so hard to tell if people are sea lining or if they're being genuine in those conversations, though. When you're talking about where you draw the line on people on hormone treatments. Anybody who's on birth control is on a hormone treatment. Yeah.
Take pregnancy, for example. Pregnancy raises red blood cells. There was a scandal. I can't remember which nation it was, but there was a scandal where one nation would encourage female participants, particularly athletes in endurance events, to get pregnant, carry the pregnancy for 3 or 4 months, have a termination because it would raise your red blood cell count. That's the level of ridiculousness that some of these federations go to. It's also incredible that some of the world's biggest dopers, Russia, for example, are always the first to ban trans athletes. Russia and other associated nations that do doping on an industrial scale have the government, the security services, and everyone from top to bottom involved on an industrial scale, doping their athletes, banning trans people because it's apparently doping and cheating. The hypocrisy is not lost on me.
Can I also just point out that trans people are not dominating sports? I hear that phrase often, like, we're just going to allow us in, and then it's just like trans. But it's more like there's one or two, and those issues become newsline worthy, and then it fades into the back. But every time it's brought up in an argument, they're like, but hey, so-and-so. It's like, yes, she did at one point win the competition. Thank you. Back in 2008 or whatever we're now talking about. But do you notice how more people are winning? Women are still existing in the sports. And it's going on.
Steph, I can't hear you.
Oh, I think you're muted. A different type because it doesn't have the mute.
Yeah, you're muted on maybe.
I am. I'm muted at home here. Yeah, there we go.
Are you lost for words? Are you speechless with what we're saying? Are you speechless?
No, shut the fuck up. I'm sorry.
Get out of town. Gone. Out. Scram, you. Scram.
Scram.
Get out of here.
I want to touch on something Amy said, which is about, do you want to see women lose scholarships? No, I want to see all women be able to have scholarships.
Wow,
and that includes trans women. That includes trans kids. I want trans kids to have the same opportunities as all kids have to participate as who they are, where they are, when they are, with their cohort. I want them to be able to lead the kind of full lives we would wish for all of our children. And I think it's indicative of how people go off the rails when it comes to this issue, because even people that say trans women are women, people like Woodford, people like Professor Dave, all of these people, I'm an ally. I'm your ally. Trans women are women, except when it comes to sports, except in that one area. And do you know what happens after that? Well, if we're not trans women in this area of human activity, in this area that everyone else has access to, if we're not women there, are we women when we go take a shower? Are we women when we try to use the bathroom, to use public facilities? Are we women here? Are we women there? You can't be intellectually honest and argue that in one area of human activity, trans women are effectively barred because they are men. And that is what they're saying. That is what you are saying, Stephen. That is what you are saying, Dave. And you're not saying it on the basis of the science. I will show you some science. Hold on a second. Let me just put this thing in there. Can we put this? I'm trying to share this on the screen, and I don't have a way of. Yeah, there we go. Transgender women athletes and elite sport: a scientific review is in the British Medical Journal. I'm sorry. This is the Canadian Center for Ethics in Sport. Now, let me say something about CCES. They are Canada's anti-doping agency. They're like the Canadian subsidiary of WADA, the World Anti-Doping Association. They're the people that say, "Oh, you're cheating. Get the hell out of town." They did a literature review of everything published between 2011 and 2021 on this subject, inclusive. And by the way, they have quite a little takedown of Hilton and those guys.
Hilton and Lundberg. Hilton and Tommy Lundberg, Lundberg. Scientific charlatans.
Yeah. Well, anyway, they conducted this review, and their key findings are really quite astonishing. They're not really astonishing. They're not really surprising. They're basically saying there is no ethical reason to bar trans women across the board from participation in athletics, with certain caveats. But there's no reason to do that. So there's that, and this is a review of all the literature. There's another. Let me share this stat tab. This is. Get back to this thing here. Oops. How come it's all grayed out and crazy? I don't know why. There we go. Effect of gender-affirming hormones on athletic performance in trans women and trans men. Implication for sporting organizations and legislators. This is a study. We reviewed fitness test results and medical records of 29 trans men and 46 trans women. So they're who started gender-affirming hormones while in the United States Air Force. We compared pre and post hormone fitness test results of the trans women and trans men with the average performance of all women and men under the age of 30 in the Air Force between 2004 and 2014. So this is a study that is not comparing trans women to cis men. It's comparing trans women to cis women and trans men to cis men, which is the relevant metric. It is not a relevant metric to compare trans women to cis men. It just isn't, because there are biological changes that take place in transition, whether from male to female or female to male. Summary. This is, and we're talking about trans women because this is the era, this is the arena where people get their panties in a twist. So, summary: the 15 to 31% athletic advantage that trans women displayed over their female counterparts prior to starting gender-affirming hormones declined with feminizing therapy. However, trans women still had a 9% faster mean run speed after the 1 year period of testosterone suppression that is recommended by World Athletics.
Now, what's the margin of error?
What about 2 years? And I would say that this is a totally unscientific but reason, knowing what the T range is. And by the way, the only people who've ever been booted from the Olympics on account of having too high T levels and being women were cis women, and chromosomally consistent cis women, not anything weird. They just happen to be naturally produce higher levels of testosterone than world athletics allowed, 5 nanomoles per liter. And that was in Tokyo, the last quad. So again, this is within the range, especially when you're talking about elite athletes. This is within a range of perhaps that's an advantage. Veronica Ivy would argue that testosterone is not as determinative as it seems to be in many circumstances. She may be right, wrong. She may be right, but this at least is a study that compares trans women to cis women, and trans men to cis men. And I think, results, if you look, prior to gender affirming, I was trying to perform 31% more push-ups, 15% more sit-ups in 1 minute, and ran 1.5 miles, 21% faster than their female counterparts. After 2 years of taking feminizing hormones, the push-up and sit-up differences disappeared. So we're talking about upper body strength. That disappears. That advantage disappears. In my sport, that's all there is. You're not really using your legs a great deal. You're not running around a sailboat a great deal. You're a 24-foot boat. How far are you going to run? But your upper body strength, that means your technique has to change. That means everything about the way you perform the job has to change in order to be as efficient and as effective. I had to relearn my sport 25 years ago because the things I could do through brute strength, I couldn't fucking do. I had to get cleverer at it. So, and the other thing that's interesting, after 1 year of taking masculizing hormones, there was no longer a difference in push-up or run times, and the number of sit-ups performed in 1 minute by trans men exceeded the average performance of their male counterparts. So, I mean, you do need to take into account the science, and for people who say that trans women should not compete against cis women are not taking this into account at all.
And can I just also point out that the way that it's often framed is to purposely get an emotional charge out of people. If you see a headline and you're just not into this sort of political thing, and it says biological men compete against women.
It won't say that. It will say biological men thrash real women.
Yes, exactly. And so when you put it like that statement, it goes, wow, we're not even playing to common sense biology anymore, and you'll get these sort of statements. And
I'm gonna raise something along these lines. They don't actually care about sports. Sports is not what is cared about here. It's got nothing to do with sports. It's about political power and grift. Riley Gaines is 101 political grifter. She tied for, I think it was 5th place, and cry-babied all the way to Tucker Carlson on Fox News because they met Leah Thomas first and gave Leah Thomas the 5th place trophy. And how dare she not get her 5th place trophy because she was a 5th place person? How dare she not get her
Riley Gaines? Riley Gaines is on tape saying that she had no problem with Leah Thomas.
Of course.
Until she discovered that she could make some pretty good coin.
Yeah.
And then she goes on Bill Maher, and that lovely guy starts asking how big Leah asking
persistent
her to describe, tasking her many times to describe Leah's endowment.
I tell you this, and we're not talking about a financial endowment here. We're talking about, things you should never be required to ask. And this is what it has devolved into. It has devolved into perverts being perverts and being allowed to be perverts. People like Bill Maher saying, now then, did you get a good look at the Todger? Because if you didn't, you're not doing what I would have done, because I'm a pervert.
That's exactly the whole time she's trying to talk about and I'm not coming to Riley's defense and anything, but she actually tried to deflect away from that topic, and he just kept pushing her. Describe that cock. It was literally the words that came out of his mouth. He kept saying, describe the cock to me. I want you to describe it. It's like, what is wrong with you? Would you ever hear any other athlete come onto a talk show and somebody's like, so the competition, you were in the locker room with them. What's their genitals look like? When would that have ever happened? Except for to a trans woman.
Can you show me pictures? Oh. Yeah, I need to see. I need to compare. Did you get like a ruler out and go, yeah, look, it was this big. No, it was this big. No, it was this. No, of course you didn't do that. But the right-wing, detritus-filled talking heads on the particularly right-wing are obsessed with what is in trans people's underwear, whether you're a trans man, non-binary, trans woman. And if you watch my show, you can find out what Amy said on that. But there you go. That's a random plug. But there you go. But that's the only context, is when it's voluntarily given in a context where someone feels safe. Never, ever ask, how big are your tits? Have you had the operation? Or can I see your Todger? If you do that, you have excluded yourself, not only from the political arena, but from humanity itself.
How many times would you do that for anybody else? I mean, really, seriously, is that what you're really going where you really want to go? I mean,
I demand to know what genitals you have. It's my right to know about what's in between your legs, god dang it.
Here's the thing. Bill Maher, I will show you mine if you show me yours first. And you do it on camera.
I'm pretty sure I know who's going to laugh.
And to slow music.
But here's the thing, though. They don't care. They don't care about the answer. All they care about is inflaming people.
That's right.
It's just inflaming people. Fox News is brilliant at it. And they just inflame people. They're substance-free, inflaming people, and that's not coming from the news side of it. That's coming from the opinion side of it, of all these places. So they hire these opinion heads. Sky News Australia, Fox News in the USA, GB News, Talk TV in the UK. They are just there to inflame people against the existence of trans people because they can't get their voting base agitated enough to elect politicians who want to destroy society from the ground up.
Yes.
Hey, I want to break.
Go, Seth. Well, if you're,
I want to break in for. I want to break in for just a second and let Skeptic Haven do a little bit of promotion for Skeptic Haven, folks. If you're watching this and you're enjoying it, we have people to thank. Cat, roll whatever you got to roll. It's.
Join us for our Halloween special, a fundraiser to help Skeptic Haven become a charity organization.
Skeptic Haven provides a healthy community and safe space to its members. In addition, producing shows that provide informative videos highlighting science, religion, and current events, both domestic and abroad. Please join us the evening of October 28th for our first Halloween fundraiser to get funds for our 501c3 and other expenses. We have many well-known YouTube content creators coming on. Come join in the fun.
Are you ready for the show?
I'm ready for the show. I'm on the show, damn it! I'm on the show, damn it!
I'm ready. I'm
on it.
I will be there.
I'm not on the Halloween show. I'm on this show.
All right.
We can see about squeezing you on the Halloween show if you want.
Well, that depends on whether I'm worthy enough.
I really want to get back to the topic of why women's sport, and I've got a few thoughts on that. I've got a few thoughts on the issue with as it relates to my sport. Okay, and
one of the people who don't know, what is your sport?
I'm a sailor. I'm a professional sailor. I am a Category 3 marine industry professional. I'm a sailmaker. It's what I've done my entire life.
And what size do you skip or crew?
It depends. I mostly sail one design boats, but I have sailed some offshore boats and competed in offshore races as well. Last weekend, I qualified for the 2024 J24 World Championships in Seattle. And I'm really freaking stoked about that. I've been to 3 worlds, and I really hope we can travel from Maine to Washington State. We'll see if my boat owner is up for it, because he writes the checks
from one side of a continent to another without saying
you hitch it. You hitch it to the F-150 and go.
America's favorite vehicle, the F Series.
Yeah. or the Dodge Ram or the whatever.
Nobody uses Dodge anymore. That's like saying, I bought a Chevy. They're the best of the big three. It's like, nah.
Yeah, I'd rather push a Chevy than drive a Ford, as some people would say. But whatever. So there's that. That's my sport. And
congratulations.
And sailing has been traditionally a very male-dominated sport, and women have been pushed off into the background traditionally for many, many years, and that started to change.
Well, I can think of one woman who wasn't pushed into the background. Ellen MacArthur.
Ellen MacArthur was pushed into the background. Dawn Riley was pushed into the background. Dawn came after, just a little bit after Ellen. But Ellen was a breakthrough person. Tremendous sailor. Sailed solo around the world. And she's a small, she's a rather diminutive person, but absolutely full of energy and fire, and a brilliant sailor. Dawn Riley similarly raced around the world on Maiden and was the skipper for Mighty Mary in the 96 America's Cup Challenge, and almost made it to the finals, but not quite. My mentors in the sailing world: Bonnie Shore, Rolex Yachtswoman of the Year, Betsy Allison, Rolex Yachtswoman of the Year.
Are they giving you a watch?
It took time. It took time to convince the old boys club. The old myth said a woman's a bad luck on a boat. But we're really, we're good. We're good. We're talented. We need to shine. It's mostly a co-ed. Sort of thing. There are a few women's competitions restricted to women. I've been invited to participate in some of them. I never have done, but for whatever reason, scheduling and whatnot. But it's not so much the division in skill level as it is the division in visibility for women to be able to demonstrate, and for young women to see that there is the possibility of excelling in the sport. That's why young girls and women's regattas are important. I have seen young women blossom in an atmosphere of girls competing against girls, and it gives them the confidence that all of a sudden they can. Hey, I can do this. This is not a big deal. I can do this. It's more cultural than it is athletic. And for that reason, I think that women's sport and encouraging women to know that they have a place has yielded results in my sport. We've had so far 2 presidents of U.S. sailing who have been women. My good friend Corey Fisher-Sertle. There was another woman who was a president before Corey. It's made a difference in the course of my life, and it's made a difference in the sport. And just to the extent that this year at Kings Point in the U.S. Intercollegiate Sailing Championships in fleet racing, mixed fleet, the team from Stanford,
the one in Connecticut, right?
Connecticut. So, no, not the one in Connecticut. Stanford, the college in California. The Stanford team won the U.S. Intercollegiate Nationals, and the sailing team consisted of, I believe it was 9 women, 3 guys. And the two teams that were on the race course, they didn't win by a little, they won by a lot. And the 2 teams that were sailing in that regatta were all women. It's made such a huge difference.
So that's a question. Sorry, you first.
Yeah, there's a similar situation in soccer, because a lot of men today just keep saying that men's soccer is obviously better than women's soccer, and they always try to compare the two, but they don't know, or they don't remember that soccer was forbidden for women after 1923 until
1921 to 1921.
Yes,
because they got larger crowds.
Yes,
larger crowds.
Exactly.
So the Football Association and IFAB banned
There's that too.
Women's soccer. Women's
Is it because they look so good in the uniforms? Is that why?
Hey, Sepp Blatter, get off this stream. Get out of here, Sepp Blatter. We will not wear tighter shorts, Sepp Blatter.
Yeah, so there was
comment by the president of FIFA.
There was this annual event, charity event, and it was usually organized by men and played by men. And in 21, women came, and they earned, I think it was double the amount of the previous year, something like that. And so right away, they just banned women in soccer.
But
easy.
I'm English. In case you hadn't noticed, I'm English. The greatest
Are you sure?
sporting moment I have ever had in my life. Greatest sporting moment I've ever had in my life. And people tried to pay me, and this is no word of lie. I had somebody say to me, here is £8,500 for your ticket, and I told them to go and poke it. Was when England played Germany at Wembley in the Women's Euros final. It was the greatest 120 minutes of sport in my life. And the women on that field played better football than any man I have ever watched play a game of football. There was no rolling around. There was no intimidation of the referee. It was a sporting event with sportsmanship, sportswomanship, whatever you want to call it, throughout. And it was England v Germany. And the best thing about that was, in the crowd, my best friend, Blair Hamilton, who is Scottish, refused to wear an England shirt. So I said, you cannot go to this game without wearing colours of one country. So I bought her a Germany top. And she sat next to me in a Germany top, and I sat next to her in an England top, and nobody gave a flying sauerkraut-filled rose.
Well, you know, when it comes to football, soccer, you know, like the U.S. national women's team has had a terrific run, right up until this year. They didn't quite make it. They didn't, and so.
And that's got nothing to do with politics. You were just useless.
Well, yeah. But what I'm getting at is they've had a great run. They're always getting shit on by the same people that say ban trans women in women's sport. They don't care about women's sport because they sit there and badmouth women's sport all the time. They badmouth they badmouth the athletes. They badmouth the idea. They badmouth the idea that the women who are far superior to the men's team throughout this run, the U.S. men's team throughout this run, they're sitting there bad-mouthing Megan Rapinoe. They're bad-mouthing everybody that was a part of that run. And now, because the women's national team had a shitty showing in this year's World Cup, they're doubling down on how ridiculous the whole thing is. I mean, it's just
the context here.
It's fucking misogyny is what it is.
Context here: over the last 3 World Cups, the women's national association football team have qualified for all 3. The men have qualified for 2. And out of those 3 World Cups, the men got to the quarterfinals in the 2 they were in. And out of the 3 the women were in, the women won 2 and got to the quarterfinals of the 3rd.
Right.
You tell me, you right-wing reactionary, leave it to Beaver, 1950s were better than today, idiot. How, up until earlier this year, it was acceptable to pay the women's team significantly less than the men's team.
Yeah. And you can also go and now we're getting into the real deal. You can also go into the NCAA basketball stuff. I think it was last year or something. They had a member of a women's collegiate team posted compare and contrast our training facilities, the men's training facilities. I mean, when you want to talk about advantages in sport, men get all the advantages in sport.
And I think
whether it comes to funding, whether it comes to training, whether it comes to anything, men get the advantages.
I think this is what it boils down to when we tie it back to why the 5 of us are here to begin with. Those cis men who are screaming and shouting fear they are next. If they see a trans person move across the divide and go, we had it good when we were pretending to be men or pretending to be women or whatever you want to use. I use that language as an exemplar, not as a universal. And they then see just what the other side has got. And then trans people turn around and go, what on earth is all of this about? Why are we allowing this to be acceptable? And they've seen the other side, because it's apparently supposed to be some secret that men get better things than women. But we know that to be true in a lot of walks of life. And these talking head reactionaries are scared that their ivory tower is going to crumble next. And they use trans people, trans men, trans women, non-binary people, intersex people, and so on, as that way of them holding up their house of cards. Because they don't want to be paid less, and by God, they don't want a woman to be paid as much as them, because they think that if that woman was paid as much as them, they wouldn't have got to the top of the tree like they did. And the fear that courses through their veins is as cold as ice.
I think you give them too much credit, because that's a very, very long reasoning that I'm not sure many of them are capable of.
I don't say they do it out of a reasoned position. It's instinctive. They are like a caged animal worried that they're going to become extinct.
But can I also give 2 reasons why it's really not about women? Number 1, I'm always like, all right, you are a big women's advocate. I had no idea you were a feminist this moment now. So congratulations. But you're trying to defend women's basketball. Can you tell me your 4 favorite, players out there? Who do you really root for? What's your favorite team? And the answer tends to be transgenders don't exist. And you're like, oh, I didn't know that was a team. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And so you then move on to, oh, no, were you about to say something? And then you have basketball, where, as someone brought up, you see what happens when biological women who don't look like the atypical women are treated. Let me tell you, the number one joke, this is just the live chatosphere of the internet, but they generally say, hey, why is a man playing in a woman's sports? This is what they do to the women they're trying to defend. Remember, these are the biological women, born biological women who are tall and just don't have a lot of the features that they associate with femininity. And generally speaking, they view them as pariahs. And
I mean, take Brittany Griner. The number of attacks on
that's who I
Brittany
meant.
Griner's existence, appearance, her relationship status, and everything else had nothing to do with the fact that she was a political pawn.
Oh, indeed. And yet we get people that, I've seen people who say you should have kept her in Russia where, other gender belonged. But I'm happy to have Brittany Griner not only back here, I'm glad that she is playing back in sports and getting championships. And I just have to say that go local team. And yes, so those are 2 main reasons.
I want to thank everybody for coming on the panel today. We've got to wrap this up right quick. I want to say some thank yous to patrons of Skeptic Haven: Sidney Davis Jr., Eric Ozols, Rion, Deneen Murphy, Dan D, Michael Wiseman, Kathy Cotton, Cindy Plaza, right over there. Let's see who else we got. Aaron Coalson, Phil Calderone, and Amanda McLeod. And please don't forget.
You forgot Sunny.
Oh, I forgot Sunny. Oh my God.
That's
Sunny Shell, I hope she starts feeling better soon. Anyway, that too. And don't forget to check out our other shows on Skeptic Haven. Secular Soapbox on Wednesdays, Thursdays the Sunday Spot, Saturday the Global Atheists, and this show right here, Women Atheists Unload, and Let's Talk, call-in talk show on Sunday. So think of some good questions and call us up. Anything you guys want to say as a takeaway? Got one thing I want to say, but you guys go first.
Let's go round the horn, shall we?
Round the horn.
All right. Well, I had this was a delightful conversation. As I was talking about some serious issues. And obviously, the 5 of us aren't going to solve this conundrum that our community faces on a daily basis in an hour. But it was nice to hear a perspective from people who are knowledgeable in the area and actually look at some real research that's been conducted recently. So thank you, Stephanie.
I haven't been here on the show for a while. I have some issues I'm trying to solve. But it was good to be here. Good to see everyone. And I hope we'll see each other again soon.
Hope so. Amy?
And I thought it was a fantastic show. Thank you for having me on this wonderful, fabulous panel. I just want to point out that I don't think it is a us versus them thing when I say that there are narratives being built to create wedge issues. That generally means that it's the very rich people that actually know better and are just using the rural religious people as a weapon against the LGBT community. So I don't want to isolate or push people who would disagree with us. I would actually invite you to to appreciate with us that we understand that these sort of things are about what is fair. But when that comes to that metric, it's about all of us coming together, trying to look at the actual sport, trying to look at things like hormones and different factors that actually may change on a sport by sport basis. And so I sort of thank all of you. Continue, please, sending love into chat. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe.
You betcha. And Phoebe?
I say, if you like what you've heard here, and you think sports themselves matter, and you don't participate in sports, and you can and want to participate in sports, go out and bloody do it. No matter who you are, if you can and you want to, go out and bloody do it. If you don't want to, or whatever reason you're unable to, it may not be for you. But if you want to really support sports, and you like sports, go and watch it. Go to your local sports team and go and find your local sports team. High school basketball, high school volleyball, NFL, WNBA, it doesn't matter. If you genuinely like sport, go and watch it. If you want to watch sport on television and you like what you've heard here, watch it. Get those viewing figures up. Tell people the eyeballs are on the sports. Stop the narratives of nonsense that we have that, oh, nobody tunes in. It's all rubbish. It's all inferior. Nobody plays it. Vote with your feet. Vote with your eyeballs and go out there and get involved in sports near you. If you like what you heard here, go and get involved. Go and watch some sport. Go watch some volleyball, some lacrosse, some lawn bowl, some duck pin bowling, some skittles, or some amateur wrestling. It doesn't matter. Go and watch it. I love sport, and I could watch virtually any sport. Rugby union, rugby league, you name it, and I'm watching it. But not everyone's like me. But if you genuinely want to support sport, give it a chance and go and find a sport that you love, even if you've never heard of it before. Because once you start getting these minority sports, and particularly women's minority sports with more viewers, more money, more participants, the nonsense that the misogynistic, self-absorbed, ivory tower living idiots use melts away. And then we can talk about what really should be the only thing here is how can we make sport better for everyone?
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing I've got to say to wind things up here is when it comes to issues of trans people in sport, no one ever has transitioned in order to win a sporting contest or a stupid pickle dish. That's not why people transition. It isn't. And for people to think that the process any trans person goes through is easy, they've never met a trans person. Sport is only part of our lives. It's an important part of my life. It's been my living. And I always get a little bit disappointed when people say, well, sport doesn't mean anything to me, so it's not really an important issue. It means something to the people that are involved with it, the people that it touches. And to objectify those people and to basically say, well, you know, your thing doesn't matter, is to basically say you don't matter. That just makes me sad. Have a little more empathy out there, people. No trans person transitions to win a pickle dish. Forget about it. That's all I got.
I know you told your friend you're not okay. And tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way. And guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away, as you fade away.
Yeah, I'm about to fade away, 'cause every time I wake up I feel like it's Monday. Something's going wrong with all the chemicals.